So with this preparation to move into the inversions, we're going to start with our body centered. So you're standing in front of your bolster towards your blocks. And I want you to press into that ball. And when you squeeze into the ball, you have it just above the inside of the knees. Okay? So when you squeeze in, you might feel the back of the upper leg around the buttocks, find almost like they become kind of cement-like as far as their operation. So I want you to bring your arms so they reach back. You actually are reaching back through the limbs. And then as you set your sights on moving forward, engage the core, but stay with the bending legs and squeezing the ball. If you need to scoot your feet in closer, do that. Squeezing the ball. And then as you start to flow your ribs down, you're going to reach forward to the blocks. And then with 2 blocks, under hands, 2 feet, start to move your feet slightly apart, both parallel. And then encourage your ribs to stretch forwards. Inhale, so it's really a arch back. And then exhale, we're going to hollow through the belly and move into cat shape or a C shape through the spine. Inhale, arch the back, feel the sitting bones, try to move back. And I find the question I have most here is the ball, right? Do I squeeze the ball when I'm moving through my spine? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just hold on to it and feel if you have access to those muscles, the pelvic floor, when you're rounding your back and when you're arching your back, right? Can you push into the ball or does it seem fairly difficult? It's a little challenging, so you might just let that instruction pass. They all do. Now we come into a deeper forward bend now, so we'll start to move our sitting bones so they're trying to go straight up. So you might take your blocks lower, and if you can go fairly flat on the blocks, I want you to do that. So if you are capable of lowering the height, but have height so that your hands can make an imprint. Rather than the floor, which you might fumble a bit in your shoulders, have something that's actually with some construction, right, some pressure. And then as I lower down my head, you choose the distancing from standing to that forward fold, head below the heart. You choose it. If it feels too much or any stress in the nervous system, let your head be a little bit higher. And then starting to come into our first pose, Uttanasana. Feel the legs activated with having something centered between an object that has a little responsiveness to the structure. So you might be attempting to squeeze into the ball. And if that occurs to you to try, walk your feet a little closer and see if it's easy to keep that engaged experience in the legs. Yeah, this is a real interesting inversion kind of chapter today. As far as how you feel your legs when you're inverted this way opposed to legs up in the air, just notice how the pelvic floor relates, pelvic organs. You want to find some tone, so that's like even tone on both legs through the groins. If one hamstring's a little more tense than the other, see if you can flow your arms a little farther forward. And now we're going to shift. So bend your knees and move the ball aside. And then start to slide your sandbag close to your toes, or maybe across the toes would be okay. And then as you move your blocks maybe a little higher, you're going to step up on that sandbag with just the ball of the foot and the toes and the heels back all the way to the floor. So stretching your calves. So be on the verge of reaching with an arch in the spine And can you use the blocks enough, which I know some of you might be off of your mat with the block set because of length. Just be sure that the blocks are on an even-ish surface, right? They're not too tilted one height than the other. And when you're perceiving the sensation in your calves, can you keep the ribs moving forward versus dropping down right now? I want you to keep reaching them forwards. Okay, and then let your leg lengthen so they're poker straight. Really try to stretch through the backs of the knees. Breathe. And then feel what it's like to soften the knees and move your belly down towards the thighs. And then move your blocks a little lower and conveniently and carefully slide the sandbag off besides your bolster. And then we'll walk the hands and the blocks back. We're actually going to come down to sitting into Baddha Konasana. Okay? So I want you to place your footing so it is together. Your blocks are under the legs, and you'll get a feel here for a belt. And reach behind you. If you like sand on your feet, you can add that. And we're going to be kind of moving with a decent pace through this. So the sandbag will be moved rather quickly, but if you want to add it, add it. So hold the belt behind you with the palms facing forwards and feel when you move your arms back, the energy in the back body through the spinal column, all the way up to the top, all the way up through the neck. And then tilt your head to your right. So right ear towards shoulder. And left ear to left shoulder. Try to keep those arms more downward than how far back you go. So feeling when the neck is stretching. It's nice to have this belt because it gives you a selection of circulation depth right in your neck. Okay, and then when we come back center, here's where I'll recommend this one for us all. If you can get that sand, let's take it also, we have it on our feet for rooting. I'm going to put my sand so it kind of layers on my lower bones of the legs. And the blocks could go kind of contoured. You might kind of shift them so they're kind of supporting the bones structure. That's kind of interesting how blocks can do that. And then when you turn to your right, you're going to bring the left hand to that right knee. My right hand doesn't know where to go. So what I'll do is use my body to hold on to that arm and find what's interesting for you for that. Maybe some people like to kind of hold their clothing. Probably the pant would be better than the shirt because it gives resistance. But it's also interesting to feel where there's always further to go. Some of these poses, it's definitely not the end. Right? There's more to do. So thick back ribs twist. Chest up. Feel your head turn to the right. And then come back forward and bring that right arm over the left. Intertwine the arms. Let the hands be kind of anywhere they want to respond to this motion with the elbows lifting up, 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 past the basic realm of lifting. Feel what that's like in your shoulders. And try to stay fairly disciplined that it's simply lifting up versus kind of swirling. You might let your eyes close for a few moments here. Sense your breath. You might even feel your breath on your arms. And then start to turn to your left. So you're going to twist to the left. Well, what does that mean when I turn? Sometimes my mind is anticipating getting the knee. and kind of getting ahead of my body's ability. So you might find the ability to turn the ribs first, like if your arms are up and out open, and then reach for that knee, and then feel if you hold onto the knee where the resistant layers come in. It might be when you hold your knee, your ribs pull back or so forth, but see if you can work on that coordination of twisting. And it is a bit of kind of yanking, right? The order of things in your muscles. But as we engage the obliques, right, the internal obliques here, keep the hold on the knee, but it's this right side of the abdomen, and it is the side that you're kind of squishing in towards the midline, and left hand around the back. Or if you do want to touch the floor, or you've got a blanket close enough and it's easy, grasp onto that lightly with your hand and feel that rotation from the belly parts, right? Feel it in the abdominal spaces and the rib spaces, but let the low back, right, like the sacrum, the lumbars, let those feel like they're very solid, right? They're kind of holding the form. So you're not trying to crank that so much as your ribs. And then the left hand comes up and open, and you come back to face front, left arm over right arm, press them. Feel that the options are hugging or colliding, right? It's both a collision course with the arms, right? So if I intertwine them and then lift up through the elbows, yep, feel that lift. And then as you situate your waist, kind of acclimate the possibilities here with the core, kind of feel what it's like when the feet are patterned to move the knees out. It might be a challenge to really feel the sitting bones helping you lift up in this pose. Okay, so with another in-breath, elbows up, up, up. Neck centered. Notice how the back of the neck feels, not too high up with the chin. And then as you unwind your arms, roll your shoulders. Okay, get a few moments here as we slide our feet forward and take our sand aside for a moment. I want you to slide your feet so they're basically in a, what I like to call this one, it's not my name of it, but it is a good name for it, sleeping tortoise. So the feet are forwards, and it's more a diamond shape. And then when you slide your hands underneath the ankles, I try to actually get a hold of my feet, right? So I'm scooping up my feet and making my back round. So it's a forward bend. As intended in the beginning of class, we're back to that placement. So we're coming back and forth. So when you're here, let's say this is not workable in your system. It could be blocks besides the ankles, right? I could set my blocks to a couple different heights and find what works for my arms. So we want to have the feet distance enough from our bolster so then there is a swirl of sensation, not just through the back, but in the legs as well. Breathing. Encounter an ability to relax your hands. And relax the neck, the brain, the thoughts. And feel how you center into these things, these poses. Now with the hands on the blocks or sliding up on the legs, let's take a moment where we put the right leg out to about 1 or 2 o'clock. We place a block between the left foot and the right thigh. Okay, so that doesn't make a whole lot of awareness there. It's the block is between the foot and the thigh. Yep, that looks right. Okay, so when we get our belt, we're going to get a belt. We're going to take a sandbag onto the top of the left thigh. And from these motions and rotations, we're going to experiment with two different shapes of the midsectional elevation, the obliques. So when you get your belt this time, let's take it overhead. Unbuckled is probably just fine. Open up through the chest and feel if the walls of the chest can actually move so that you have this swoop, right? It's kind of a arch through the back. Can you see me okay with all this? Yeah, okay. I could turn my mat around, I suppose, but we're good. Okay. All right. I see people. All right, so here's the opportunity now with the arms. Now, as I lower down the belt, I'm going to put the ball over under my left knee. It needs some help. Okay, so I'm going to reach the belt under the right foot, and as you attain that belt, I want you to hook onto your belt with your hand and pull yourself down towards that right leg. Now, there's a couple options you can work with here. And I want you to play with the two options. So you can bring your belt behind your back and hold on to that belt with the right hand. So your belt is around to the right hip. My left hand holds the belt. Now that's a real basic element of holding space exactly as you intend for your lower left side of the waistband, the QL, the obliques, right? These internal oblique muscles. So if that holding the belt doesn't work for you, don't do it. You can stretch your right arm or left arm open, and you might bring it up towards the ceiling. Okay, so kind of feel for your body. Is it better to hold the belt so you feel stability, or is it important for you to get some air in the pose? Okay, so we're in a seated side angle. And in the essential side angle stretches, if they're standing side angles or seated, you're working towards this energy in the ribs to engage the abdominal muscles. Okay, so space a few moments here where you're lengthening through that left side, arm behind you or arm over the side of your head. Right hand holds the belt firm. Breathe. Be so dedicated to the side sensation, okay, that the back is very safe and protected, right? You're not going to twist into the back right now. It feels nearly like a twist. It's that side stretch. Okay, now as you slide your hands to come back up, I want you to keep with this left side awareness. So we'll take our block, move it in front, and then take the belt off the right foot and tuck that right foot in behind the left ankle or the left calf. So you're cross-legged with left leg forward. You keep your sand on your left leg. You keep the ball or a block under that left knee. And then you move your block now to the right side. So the only thing you really took away was your leg. Well, you didn't take your leg away, but you don't have it straight out anymore. It's bending. So when I lean to the right corner to about 1 or 2 o'clock, man, I can start feeling this again. But, you know, in comparison from here and reaching or back, it does kind of unfold into some deeper tissues closer to the tailbone. So, and sometimes the glutes. So take a few moments here. Let your head lower down. The block could be to the right, and it can also be straight in front. All right, you could stay here. You could use 2 blocks, 1 under each hand if you prefer. So create a few moments here. Be sensitive to regulation of breathing to monitor the ability to let go. Any kind of little movements like rocking side to side can be therapeutic. I think it's important to offer some variation of circulation to the connective tissue and massage through it. You know, if I come back forward with my block, some of you are to the right, come back towards the front, kind of stabilize in the lumbars, okay? Now, can you come up to the switch, the transition, without as much arch in the spine? So I want you to be a little careful here. So when you come back, you might put your hands on the legs and then chin to chest and then come up and then try to lift up. If you're kind of sliding off your bolster, you might scoot a little bit back, but the bolster is going to help that ledge of height. So when I change sides, my left leg stretches out and that knee is happy to get out of the bend. So stretch out the left leg so you can cool off the back of the knee and then place a ball under the right knee and then off we go. We got our belt and we've got a block that goes in the inside of that left thigh and it's a spacer. Now if your right foot doesn't push in, like the sole of the foot is naturally going to have some curve, my hope is that this is helping the leg stretching. So it's like it's a natural spacer. So if it's just your heel, that's okay on the block. So get the belt. This time we'll reach for the foot initially. And then as we begin that pattern of holding with the left hand, can you turn forward, feel the pull of the pulling the belt, feel that left side of your back, and simply stay with that pattern for right now. Holding the belt, spine upright. And as we start to bend our left elbow, we're going to lean in to that side. And you might feel, right, when you lean in, that reach with your hand, that pull with your arm muscles. And as you engage, I want you to let your ribs turn and feel when you rotate. Right? Be cautious of how the flesh kind of spins around, right? So you want to feel that each position you rotate into, you can stay in for a few. Right? So if it's a little achy, back off, arm can go up, over, or behind you. And that one idea I mentioned last slide, you can also offer that where your both hands hold the belt. It's pretty secure that way. But it does feel pretty intense in that right lower quadrant of the waistband, right into the side of the abdominal muscles. You can kind of feel that. Looks nice. Yeah, so you have that elongation and the rib rotation is, it's not our maximum rotation. It's not a spinal twist per se. I mean, it has some components of that layered in, but it's a side bend. So getting the torso to reach. Yeah, you want to let the box of the lumbar vertebrae, you know, it's pretty thick vertebrae, to feel like it's centered right on down to where your seat is. And you're very safe there. You're getting some circulation around it. Okay, so take another few breaths here. Remember, if the arm is up and over, taking it back for a few moments would be useful, okay? So you have the opportunity to lengthen through your side. It's kind of a mysterious area to work on getting long. Yeah, it's not like a daily habit in your posture to get the sides long, but it does create quite an opportunity for your lower back to be eased and comforted, and the organs that are underneath, right? For us right now, it's kidneys, low back, waistline. So now when you start to come up, right, we're stay with this right side focus. So we take the belt off, okay? We might move the block right away. Now it's the right leg focus. So all I do is slide my left foot in underneath. So my sandbag is still on that right thigh. And then when I come forwards, yeah, you might want another block under your left leg. You might be kind of figuring out how to use the ball and block. But my basic nature here is to reach forward, okay? Feel the motions where I have a bit of a cat spine. Okay, so let the lower back give way to ease, and the block can go to the top left corner or in the front. And I kind of feel what is the best placement for your quadrant of your waist that you were just stretching. I want you to let all these kind of cycles of sensation, they just multiply during class. And then we end up with so many poses, then there's no poses. All right, so where you feel that left leg grounded, the right hip is in that centering space to open. And if your block is to the left, take it forward. If you're not using a block, that's okay. You could be comfortable with your hands. As a simple, so it's what's called a Sukhasana pose, simple, cross-legged, easy pose, forward fold. Okay, now we're gonna completely change the adductor alignment. So when you walk your hands up to your legs, okay, I tend to kind of jolt a bit. So really be comfy in your back. Let your head lower, pushing into your hands to get upright. Kind of feel what that is like once you start to take the sand away, and then lift up the knees. And then with the ball between the knees, scoot forward so that you really are on the kind of the edge of your bolster. It's not the edge short end, but it's the center. So your seat is just about on the ground. You're close. You're playing a little bit of a risk here with that one. But I want you to feel that risk so that you'll engage with the object of support. So we're going to lean back. Okay, we're not going all the way to the floor at all right now. Very soon we will. But right now, lean back, squeeze the ball, and then when you hold on to your roots of your fingers, interlace, turn the palms inside out. I want you to move forward with your hands, not up to the sky, but simply forward over the ball. Inhale, belly full, like belly balloon. And then exhale, hollow the belly, chin to chest. So inhale, belly balloon, like your belly's going to meet the balloon. It's going to be a balloon next to the ball. And then round your back. I hope not. Okay, inhale, forward. Keep it straight in front. And then exhale back. Be aware of the side tundra of the waist, that it's probably fairly grippy right now. So take one last time. Okay. Now notice when you're back, you don't have to hold this, but notice this side strip from your sides of your ribs, and when you hold this shape, how it deeply tones. Okay. Now that area is going to go flat in a moment. So when we come forwards, okay, connect to the ball, remove that temporarily, because you can't flip upside down with it between the knees. And you're going to slide forward so you truly are moving into legs up. You got one blanket, if any, under your head. You don't have to use blanket. But when your legs go up, feel around actually you might touch around the ribs, and you'll feel kind of that lift, like it is it's kind of an interesting, the terracing here is quite for your respiratory system. So these are considered respiratory muscles and bones, all of the sides are important for your lungs. So when you're in this position, I want you to add that ball again and add it so it's on the inner thigh, not between the knees, but above the knees, right? So it's closer downwards to you. And I want you to let the legs be basically straight as they can comfortably be with your knees. And circle the feet and stretch your arms open. If you got enough space around you to open out the hands, the arms, and let the hands and arms relax to the weight that they are naturally, and feel the feet turning open and back inward, so stretching and refreshing the feet. And then once that's happened a good 5-6 times each direction, feel the feet just simply neutral. And that magnification of your muscles squeezing into the ball. I want you to continue that squeezing process until you would say, this is my maximum that I could live with for the moment, not forever. It's a mighty long time. Now, can you find that sweet spot where if you move your feet a little forwards, okay, you recruit your stomach. You feel a little bit of stomach. Now, I feel hip flexors too. So it feels like a tiny bit of hip flexor energy. So I'm going to be a little careful on that. So as you bend your knees, they're about a right angle, but let them be comfortable. Let them just go. And you're going to move your knees to the right side. I want you to squeeze the ball. Well, I know you're squeezing the ball to keep it, but purposely squeeze into that right leg with the left thigh pressing down. And then come back and go slow. Each side, take your time, let any instruction that figures into your decision making kind of flow in and out. But as you move side to side, be careful on the lower back. So I want to make the movements from my hips to stretch my hips a bit. Okay, so play with this opportunity to go side to side. Feel if your knees kind of kick up towards your chest, what that feels like in your back. If your knees are straight over, it's a little more in your hip. So give it a little side to side moments here. We're going to add quite a change. So let's see, do we have our blocks nearby? You probably know where you have one of them, huh? Where are your props? Okay, got sand, got blocks. Try to get them back towards where you're going to need them. Okay, so go one more each side without too much of that fretting for your blocks. Block frets. On the block frets. Okay, so come back into center and move the ball away and knees to the right on a block. Okay, now my knees aren't, they're stacked, my legs are stacked, but my knees are not quite aligned because I have a pelvis and these things make a different alignment happen. So what I want you to add is a sandbag to your external left thigh and maintain this waist, kind of the liberty you take with the support of your feet together. If they're starting to slip and slide a little bit from perfection, it's okay, but find where your feet are actually together. They feel like they're either hooked together, but they're in towards each other. They're in each other's business, your feet, okay? Now with my sand, I'm gonna offer moving it down towards the knee. I'm gonna put it mid-thigh, kind of the belly of my thigh, and then closer to the top. And then make a decision based on where it feels grounded. Okay, let that be for the next few moments. Separate that left arm out. Don't take it away from your body, but get a feel for this turning to the left. Maybe your head turns. Maybe your eyes turn inwards. And you can visually study, internally visualize what rotation feels like. It's kind of turning us backwards. It turns us inwards to twist. Let your eyes rest and feel the belly operation with breathing. Receiving your breath, relaxing on your out breath. Now, if the sensation that is offered from this pose, if it's rather sharp or intense and you know it's just temporary, then notice what you can do maybe with your neck muscles that's comfortable. So if turning my head and I feel tension may not allow me to relax my neck, since that's probably our nervous system's first responder would be our neck muscles, right? So you might let your head really truly be right in the center. Relax your eyes. Still receiving the stretch, maybe less tension in the neck. So arms are open. A few more breaths. You can tell some things shift circulation-wise in this position. So if you have any feelings that come up of, wonder how this is going to respond when I have to go in between the sides, what my bones will call out for. So one thing I like to notice is to keep the energies today. We're going, when we did our side stretch, we tried to stay with that side and kind of coach it along to releasing. So this is that left hip. So we're going to stay now with the hip flexor on the left side, which will work with the quadricep. So you're going to move the sandbag on the top of the left thigh and stretch that leg down, and be a little cautious when the right leg flips up, that as I hold on the back of the right leg, I'm going to keep it real simple. Let's not use the belt today. Let's not brain float. Let's just keep it this way. If you've got a brain float because it's such a good neck stretch for you, do it, right? Take a belt, put it behind your head and your foot, all those things that are helpful for you. But if you're interested in your hip flexor as well, this might be a little bit more dense since we're just kind of plugging into the one spot. So we've got our sand on the left thigh. Should I put 2 sands on? If I got a couple, you might add a second one and slide the sandbag closer down the leg towards the actual quadricep cap, the belly of the quad. I mean, the quad is a hip flexor, so I always find this an interesting practice. All these different flexors, this mishmash of stuff in the front of the leg and the lateral rotators it could use some internal work like this, and some self-massage with the ball is a good balance. So we'll do that today. So pull into the right leg, hold the back of the leg. Now, the difference with the leg bending versus straight, is maybe not a lot for you. You might be wanting a little more hamstring work, but you decide if you want to take the leg up higher and stretch the hamstring, take that. If you want to hold the back of the leg and pull it towards you and feel the left heel stretch away, take that. The best way you could do this pose would be if your foot was at a wall, right? So you could really feel that contact. So keep that in mind. You can always go to a wall real quick if you want to. It does kind of run you around the room. Might be too much of a run around. Okay, now before we exit the station, I know sometimes it's not all gone. The stress in that area doesn't just all, drain away into the sink. So feel where the leg is stretching. Feel where the business is pretty gripped up. Kind of feel the top of that left thigh. Notice Noticing the thigh muscles, okay? Now when we change the side, I want you to let that sand slip off, and we're gonna do a bridge pose in between, but it's super restorative, supported, super duper. So we let the right leg go down, and we get our sandbag back up. We shouldn't have put it too far away, huh? Kept it there. And then I have my sand on my thighs, and I'm gonna stretch my feet apart and see if I can pivot my toes in slightly. So I'm not even sure if they're actually doing that. They're probably parallel, but I'll take my feet out and the toes in. I'll take my chances there. Now, if the back arch is too deep here, instead of complaining internally about it and just coping with that, reach the ribs open. Really be obnoxious about the chest opening part, because this area is usually generally forward most of the day, and it affects how your back feels. So open up the skin layers in the front, reach the chest open, take a few breaths. I know it's simple as all, but it is a bridge pose. It does account for bridge and length in the front. Okay, now feel the feet if they just turn out. Notice what happens if they roll open. Notice when you turn them back in, if those fibers are just really stiff. Because for some of us, the inner thigh fibers are a little looser, and so it's easier to let the feet turn out, but you may not be getting the area of your thigh you need to stretch. So when we come back up this next time, I want you to bring your knees to bending and make sure your seat, right, is kind of close to the edge of that bolster. The idea here is that you want your ribs to be spreading out horizontally, and so you want your tush almost to the edge, if not right at that edge, right? Almost to that spot. Maybe not hanging on the floor, but there. Knees up, knees to left, add your sand. Keep going in. So as we shift over to this other side, we didn't take a big break there, I know. Let your arm on that right side open. Make it therapeutic here. I know this side is probably ready to get balanced out to help out the other side. I know it'd be easier to step inside some machine and you get all jiggled and balanced out, huh? But you gotta do all this work. I was reading in something that said, how often should I do yoga? And it says, only the days that you want to feel better. I thought that was a good one. I thought I would have some comment about, just like when you brush your teeth, do it every day, but only the days you want to feel better. Hopefully you find a practice that's bettering. So if the block is under your legs, make sure it's high enough to support you. And that takes a little bit of investigation. I know the lower it is, the more stretch you'll get, but maybe it's too much. So feel the ribs, especially the mid to upper ribs, turning open to the right. Head turns right. You can always touch around your rib cage and kind of feel how perfectly balanced they are. If they're all attached well, it's a huge amount of muscle in there between each rib, the intercostals. So stretch the muscles between the ribs by breathing deeply. And how much air you get into the lungs is dependent on the movement of the ribs. It's pretty cool. Respiratory support. Now let your arms open if they're starting to get confused where to be. You might change the sandbag, lower it down. If it feels pretty darn good where it's at, how would you make any shift happen in the area that it's tense, right? Would it be the opposite area you would inspire, right? It might be around the sheath of the buttock, all the way, right, around the back of the rear that you're trying to ease over to the left. So visually are scanning the awareness around this right buttock. So when we're working through this lateral rotator sphere, which is the IT band, the piriformis, those are kind of they cause the perfect storm sometimes. So what we're going to do is try to slide our energy from that side down to the front, which is the quad. So when you do change, you might just get a hand on that sand. Hands on sand. Okay. Now you could slip it up, so you have to kind of pull it to the actual rear of things. And then I'm going to squeeze my feet in towards my rear. And then when I turn on my back, I'm going to slide that right foot down, put the sand on top of the right thigh. Of course, if you have more sand, add it. If you have one, you might find the very top of the leg. So it's kind of like it's contoured to the leg and the inner thigh, and then hug the left leg in pretty quickly, right? You don't want to have the lower back stirred up and wondering where its helper is, right? And the hands are the helper here. You got to really give a helping hand to your left leg. Otherwise, the back will not be very happy with you. So as the legs are in this offering of movement, right, there's a discipline to be kind of organized around with your holding of the leg. So, get a feel if you hold higher up on the back of the leg, lower down towards the knee, and just play with it. I mean, these leg fronts are clearly the most vulnerable space because they're, we're contracting them over and over while we walk. They're just constantly kind of overused, I guess you could say. Muscles aren't working in balance, right? So if we're not going to crawl around, then we've got some work to do here on these fronts. So let's just keep it very clear and specific. Now, if you want to grab that, the stretch in the hamstring a little more, you could always kick your left leg up. It's not going to hurt things. It might feel good to you to get that full reach. I feel different on each side with the coordination of hamstring and the quad length. So when I kick this leg up, it feels like it influences my right leg stretch. Other side, it didn't so much. Of course, your right leg might have different issues. Okay, so give it a few more moments. You might have an idea where this is going. Maybe you're not sure where we're going with this, but we'll figure it out. Okay, now where the leg is roaming is to flex the bottom foot, the toes are up. Now, if you were in a habit where the foot kind of flung out, it might not be very helpful for a long-term solution there for your quad to actually lengthen. So there'll be a couple things we'll do. We're going to drain out the legs entirely. So I want you to take your left leg so it still feels that stretch in. Get your sand. And this time we'll slide it up to our core. Both hands hold now. And then bring your knees up. Now, again, this is the important part. Of course, it's something I've been relearning now. So my seat is on the edge of the bolster, right? This is to help strengthen my back as well. So when I bring my knees in towards my chest, I got a little more bolster to play with that way. And then slip my sand on my feet, okay? Push up, but when you push up, if you get a little bit kind of rocky on your balance after all that you've been doing there, I want you to maintain, so if I put my hands on the top of my thighs, kind of jiggle my thighs a little bit side to side, that insertion at the top where I had my sand trying to help it stretch down. I want you to feel that the thighs on that layer are not rotating out, like turning out, like first position ballet kind of thing, but they're really going an opposite way. So my feet are parallel-ish, you know, the feet are flexing and so forth. But I want you to feel this thigh flesh. If anything, right, you feel the knees separate. So if you were to grab the thighs, instead of this rotating out, right, you're trying to kind of rotate them in a little bit. Okay. And then just let your thighs go. They don't want to be played with too much on the pose. Let them drain. Take a block, okay, and place it center of your hands wide. Move overhead with that block. Can you find a block safely? Okay. Stretch overhead, hover over the ground with your hands holding the block. Hover the block. Block hover. Okay, so I'm holding onto that block. My arms are certainly active. Okay. So feel where your shoulder blades are connecting down the back. Okay, you're kind of doing a reverse methodology where you hold the block with the hands, so you have one direction, and then your arms are overhead, that's another direction, and then shoulders down the back. That's the interesting feature, okay? So can you bend your elbows, right? And so it's almost like you got your block now touching your head, that type of pattern. And then bring your block towards the ceiling. So now you got both arms, both hands, but this time they have something between them that has a little weight, right? So you don't want to completely give up. Neither would you do something like this, right? This wouldn't be a pose that we'd work on because our wrists are doing this all day long, right? Our feet are doing this all day long too, so it's kind of an interesting discussion. But right now what I want you to do is put that block back, just let it go, and then bring your arms up, and when you're reaching with your hands to the roots of the fingers, this is not something you do with your feet, right? You might if you spend time with them doing this. But as you turn your palms towards the ceiling, this would be a better way. So reach through your heels of your hands to stretch your wrists. Okay? Try to keep that Hastasana hand. So you're trying to keep that stretch for the wrists. Try to maintain that extension through the palm. And then bring your arms overhead. Ribs go back. Thick back ribs. Lengthen the front ribs. Let go of the grasp, let it go. If you got a block there you can find, put your hands on the side of it, but don't lift it off the floor. Just let that be a stabilizing and spacing of the hand support. Now mentally tracing the outline of your body, kind of notice how the feet receive. So as you flex your feet, stretch your calves. Okay, now bounce a little bit on this one. You're going to feel, not bounce, but bounce the ideas. You're going to feel the feet move a little bit back so they're over belly, that area. And then as you bend your knees, try to keep your hands overhead and a few leg presses. So push the feet straight up. You can make them very minor so they're not going to be judged. Right, we're not going to get the rulers out and see how far down the knees will go. But do some truth, some really truthful work here. So when I bend the knees, I try to feel the legs close to my belly, massaging that area and then pushing up. Do some work with it, right? You may as well, you're here. So you're putting some energy into the circulation cycle. Now notice this pose. Everything seems to be a reason for it today, one to the next. Notice the back of the legs, right? They might be contracting. Well, what they're going to contract towards is a bridge pose. This doesn't feel like bridge pose to me, but it's interesting because it's the same muscles from this pose to the next. So now we're going to move that block over to the side and then take our sand, and as we put it back overhead, I want you to bring your hands to your bolster. Keep the knees so they're their interest is bending, peaked interest up. And then as I push my bolster forward, I carefully keep my knees to my chest. And then feel that roundedness right before your bolster is gone. Now, if you already got away from the bolster, that's okay. It's hard to get back there. But feel where it's kind of right on the edge. It's sort of stretching your back, a tiny thread. And then when you move your bolster away, I want you to replace your feet now on something so they're on the bolster. And then when you lift up your hips, lift, lift, lift up, try to get your maximum lift. I want you to try that lift for the quads as much as possible. You can remove your blanket if it's bothering your, if your sand is over by that, you might have to move that away. If it bothers your cervical vertebrae, you decide. If it feels like the back of your neck is overstretching and actually tensing up deeper, then you remove the blanket. Now, arms overhead, stretch through. Exhale, lower your spine. Okay. Once the spine is centered and down, I want you to press down into your feet and feel how the glute muscles, the buttock muscles, you don't have to touch them because they may not respond to tone right away, but you can feel how that area in the back is kind of rigid. So what I want you to do is add your ball, okay, between the knees, and then touch onto the thighs. Now when you squeeze into the ball, the energy pushes in and the back opens, okay? So keep that simple and try to practice this. So when I push down into my feet, try pushing into your feet, not into my feet. And then when you lift up, go so slow. It's like you're trying to point your knees to the other side of the room and your tailbone is stretching towards the other side of the room. You're lifting up, you're keeping the back really supported. And then bring your arms overhead. I thought we'd add some blocks, but let's keep it here. So alternate, lift and lower. Feel the sweep of movement just as clear on your back touchdown as it is on the front leg lengthening. Okay, try to notice here how this stretch through the legs when you don't have them weight bearing, like we would in an up dog where we can use the weight of them to drag them to stretch. We're using the resistance and our actual discipline to get there. So next time you lift up and over, I want you to keep the hips up and find a mild pressure with the legs, squeezing the ball, and then relax the squeeze. Squeeze the ball, relax. Now continue that practice with your arms overhead and relaxed. And if that doesn't work, the arms are in cactus and relaxed. Okay, either one. Squeeze and release. Now next time you squeeze, feel that circulation through the inner thighs. Just be clear what you're feeling there. If you can, find some clarity with that. And then when you come down, the inner thigh awareness, feel the very tail end kind of scoop up. And then knees to chest, take the ball out, cross the right leg over the left leg, knees over to the right. You might insert a ball right underneath the legs on that right side. No sand. It's certainly an IT bend stretch. So this left leg is vulnerable. If your knees are not happy with it at all, it's too much pressure, undo the legs and have the knees to the right, just not crossing, okay? If it's the medial line of the knee that's feeling that, see if you can manage the weight without the ball. See if it's a little easier on your knee. Okay, lower back deep arch, arm open. Okay, come back to center and hook that right ankle to your left knee. Hold the back of the left thigh, hug it into your chest deeply. Keep the right elbow somewhat jabbed into the leg so it doesn't let the leg get as close as it wants to get. And if it's not responding, lower the left foot down. Okay, and you can hold below the knee, but be careful with the knee stuff, right? So how much you pull around the kneecap and kind of tighten that area. Feel if you can give it some freedom. Breathe. These are all kind of site-specific layers today, huh? You got to sweep through the set. Uncross, left leg over right leg, knees to left. Okay. Sweeping through the series. So when my knees go left, I could use a ball underneath that left leg, like kind of up near the buttock, high thigh. Kind of feels nice. We'll do a little self-massage next before we come up. So get a feel. We got to get to side sage. Can't miss out our sage poses. Maybe we will. Okay, now where the IT band is recognized here is that we hold the leg, right? It crosses over that right leg and it kind of cinches it up and it pulls it. So it's a pin and stretch pose, pinning it down. Yeah, it's pretty sensitive usually, this whole strip of lateral rotator, connective tissue, the muscles there. Okay, so how that area is kind of weaved together is really complex. It's like layer over layer of muscles to protect your hips, right? So you stay fairly put together for decades. So when you come back up, left foot, right knee, hold the back of the right leg. Take some cautions here with knees, right? Make sure they both feel kind of open and supported. And as you hug in the right leg, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Yeah, if you're used to our typical hip crossovers that we kind of usually do 90% of the time, we're just shifting it up today. So these are what we're getting, and it's a little deeper, more dense, not as kind of lazy to get into. That's okay. Now when I hold the back of that right leg, I'm going to pull and I get a significant drive into the left glute. Okay. Now as you uncross, I want you to actually let your body do a little massage on the glutes. So push into your bolster, lift up your rear, put the ball under any rear, right or left, doesn't matter. And I want you to use significant amount of body weight into the ball and let the body roll a little side to side. It feels like you're wagging your tail. But find a trigger point around the glute. So it might be glute medius, so it's the upper part of the actual back of the buttock. I find it's more on the side of the buttock near the hip root, where it feels like the tendrils there could use that massage. And it's kind of nice to use the ball because even if you got a massage, these areas are just so tricky to get into comfortably as well. I mean, they're just kind of awkward, for a therapist and all that. So try to work with yourself, right? Because you can kind of get in there into that glute and then get to the other side. Try to let your body weight be a significant part of it. So give in, squish the ball. Now, if you end up needing a little ball pump, you can find one of those, or I guess could get another ball. But they're good to have to pump up. Okay, so really push and move the tissues. Try to feel if it's a global shearing, like you feel the skin kind of getting pulled. The slow go is good too. Slow shearing through the connective tissue. Okay, now when we come around, we're going to roll and come up. Okay, so come on up, take a position on your hands and knees with your blanket under the knees. I would take your blanket out so you'll have your bolster at the front. Yeah, a quarter fold is good, but sometimes on these positions, maybe out in a little bit more of a square, might give you a little bit more connection to the ground, so you're not like these opposite heights with your knees. And then when you come to all fours position, I want you to actually let your hands go as wide as your mat, if not a little bit off the edge. Space your knees, hips distancing, and wider if possible. And then lower down your hips and feel how your arms have to be kind of bolted to support their elevation of your torso, right? I know a bolster would be nice here, we'll add it soon, but feel the junction in the shoulders and then come up to table. Try to find a table pose where your neck is long and then lengthen back. Yeah, feel when you reach your head to the floor or your blanket, whatever it touches. Feel the broadness of the chest, open the chest. Breathe into your back. And then round your back through cat spine, so rounding, and then come all the way forward and reach. All right, try to make it a little more organic this time, the opportunity of cycling movement. So now some of us might really grab in our belly muscles to get support to move back. And that's okay. So round your back, try to go all the way up to the neck when the movement goes forward. And then once the nape of the neck has that kind of that full force motion, feel how you unwind and come forward and lift up at that gaze to the ceiling. And then come back through center. So give it a few moments here. Feel the reach through the back. Yeah, it's a lot more opportunity than when you're in bridge pose, right? To really move through your back. You have many more. It's different though. It's not like it's better, but it is different how you can approach. Good. Through, that all looks good. Through the spine. But if you visualize the shaping and movement, the spine has a little bit different types of hydrating qualities when you're on all fours than on your back. Okay, so last time when you come back forward, I want you to try to get your bolster, hands on top. We may as well use some support under our head, huh? So I find, let's see, the other blanket's probably ideal because it's not quite as gripped up as my sandbag, huh? It's a little different. Now, spec's got to be off for this. My hands are on the bolster. My knees are in a wider than rib cage position, right? So it's like child's pose, but it's not as knee pressurized. So I have my forehead down, hands forward over that bolster. Now, get as much of a reach in your ribs as you can. This is going to be for our final set here, which will get side sage. So I want you to really clutch onto that bolster like it's effort. And the inner thighs, right up to the groin, very top of the inner thigh, probably feels like it's gripped up here. So feel your feet relaxed. If you hook your toes under, it might feel better, right? So top of the foot down or toes under. Try to keep that reach, head down at the blanket. Let it go. Really let your head push down. Okay, now as you come up, you're going to set up your props. So you're going to move your blanket on the other side. This is for the ribs. And we're going to place our blanket here on the other side as well. Okay, what I do want you to focus on for a moment is just get your knees off the ground before we come into side stage. So we'll have our hands between the props, bolster and blankets. We'll lift the knees up and stretch out the back of the legs all the way to the heels. Feel that reach through your sitting bones pretty simply, not too much pushing up with your seat. Feel the legs as if they move back, because they do. Okay, Okay, we'll start with the right side open first, the right side, the right digestive tract. So when we lower down, I'm going to turn away so that we can get to that right side first. So we're going to have our left hip down. So that right side is lengthening. My left leg is tucked up to my bolster. My sand is on that right side, and maybe you have a ball on the inside of the right leg. So lengthen that side bone shape from the knee to the hip to the arm. Be sure your blanket is tucked in to help your head relax. Okay. So when we move through the ribs, open the chest. You really feel that feature of the length of the right arm. And kind of play with the arm having a stillness. Maybe you have a block overhead under your right hand. Maybe there's a block you can find for that. Now keep turning open. So if I have a ball on the inside of the knee, I'm going to carefully move my sand, and then I'm going to actually turn to my back, ball between the knees. I'm going to move my back arch fairly deep, right? So I have my bolster under my upper back ridge and my blanket under my head, my arms in cactus. So feel from that right side now to your midsection before we get to the final side. So we put it all together with a bow. Hopefully you brought a bow to class too. A little bow you could stick on your forehead. Okay, now when you're ready to go to side sage with the left side open, right, the descending colon side, you go into it. But if you like this, you can stay here. Let's say you like this and you want to be in Baddha Konasana, you can do that, even if it's for a second. So when you switch sides, I'm trying to encourage you to move from your back to get there. So you're using all these parts versus just your brain to get places. I guess you need your brain too. So fully functioning side reach. Add sand when you're ready, if you are. If you realized you were never ready, that's okay. So feel if you're comfortable with this. I don't know, maybe the whole sequence. It was different. So they're all different, but noticing what's interesting for you internally from the sequencing. If it's just a lot of inner work and you're not sure, this might be a time to be present for the side sage only. And relax your waist with your breath. With that full motion of in and out breath. And feeling the experience of the body moving with the breath. Now, when you come around to your final pose, I want you to decide if that for you is going to be, interestingly enough today, what might be kind of nice to take into completion would be Supta Baddha Konasana. So we didn't do that. Not a bit. We didn't do anything like that. So you could pivot your bolster up on top of the blankets right here and turn and bring your blocks on the in and into it so they're under your legs. You could be here. You could use your belt to bound the legs and put sand on your feet, or if you have 2 sandbags, one on each thigh. Be belt free on this one though, since it's the completion cycle. If you decide, no, I really need to have my legs up the wall, then you can take legs up the wall. Or you could have your bolster so it's set up like a bolster bench. You decide. Or maybe you're doing shoulder stand. Okay. Not sure what you're going to choose to do. All right, so lower back onto the blanket, final pose. Take a few moments where the hip muscles, right? It feels weird to have one sand. So if you only have one sand with you right now, have it across the ribs or the feet. Okay, so balance the circulation through the inner thighs. So as the back is centered on the bolster and the blanket, spread the chest open with the arms wide. And relate to the length of your inhale and the departure of the exhalation, and follow those 2 lines of awareness. This is well worth your time investment to sharpen the awareness around the wave of the breath, going in and going out. Improve upon the juncture of the rib cage balanced. And if the front of the thighs feel slightly more open than they have before, doing this pose towards at the very end might be refreshing sometimes. Feeling ease and balance. Now, with the inclusion of the dimension of the pose shape and the pace of your breath for a count of 4 and a count of 5 exiting the body, just the breath itself. Now feel the shoulders centered back and opening the heart. Whatever image comes to mind when the heart is open. Making some space for oxygenation, circulation, and living. And then as we start to come into the pattern of moving out of the pose, we start to feel the arms move down by the sides, wherever pose you've chosen, and moving your sand away, and then the knees closer towards each other. And whether you're on your back with your knees drawn into your chest, if you're on your back already with your knees in this position, you won't be pulling them to your chest. But you'll feel that you can actually just roll to the side and let your hands help you up. So come to a seated position, very simple, cross-legged, just feeling the support that's out there from those in this session today. If you can find that collective consciousness, let the arms move to the hands together and bow into the heart center. Surrendering there. Feel if your hands push together or if they lightly touch and the thumbs draw down to the chest and there's a gentle opening in that center. And with our breath together, inhale, and with exhalations, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you all.